We all know why we're here. So let me ask you a question then. Why the big secret? Truth seekers, we're really the true leaders. Keep it grooving, the movement like two-seaters. Turn it up, we knocking through both speakers. It's time we get the truth from the big secret keepers. Hey, truth seekers, we're really the true leaders. Keep it grooving, the movement like two-seaters. Turn it up, we knocking through both speakers. It's time we get the truth from the big secret keepers. Hey, break it down, now can you peep it? They're deceiving all the people. Let me ask you, what's the secret? Misinformation and lies, a devious disguise. They want the EMF blast until our brains is fried. Oh, point their beams in the sky. Oh, it's a movie now. This world is all CGI, their plot is truly foul. But we're here to rise up and bring the real. Time is now, truth seekers, y'all know how I feel. Truth seekers, we're really the true leaders. Keep it grooving, the movement like two-seaters. Turn it up, we're knocking through both speakers. It's time we get the truth from the big secret keepers. Hey, truth seekers, we're really the true leaders. Keep it grooving, the movement like two-seaters. Turn it up, we knocking through both speakers. It's time we get the truth from the big secret keepers. Hey, why the big secret?
Truth seekers, all right, it is Tuesday night. I want to welcome you to Forbidden Knowledge TV, and you're at the Roderick Martin Why the Big Secret show. We do this here once a week, so that's weekly, and that's weekly with two E's and not W-E-A-K for all of you scholars in the world. And we got a great show for you tonight. We're going to talk about some things that's outside the norm, because all the time we always focus on what's happening in the United States when it comes to the UFO thing and aliens and extraterrestrials. We're going to cover some global ones that was, was big when it happened in the past, but is less talked about today, and we're going to get into it today, so I can't wait to get into that as well. And as always, if you are here, I want to say you could have been any other place tonight, but you chose to be right here, right now. With that being said, I bid you good evening, good morning, good afternoon, and wherever you may be in those 24 time zones that this show airs. We're going to talk about four things today. We're going to have four segments, and one in particular is going to be what's happening in Russia. It was 1989 is when it happened. We're going to go all the way over to Bangladesh, Brazil. Anyway, we're going to go there, and we're going to go to France. We're going to go to Australia. As always, I like to give my quick disclaimer, and we have a letter box. It's virtual. It's going to be over here to your right. In that particular box is unlimited letters. So if you find anything misspelled, you're authorized to go in there and get it. It's unlimited. Over to the left side is my virtual grammar box. If I make a mistake and you feel that it needs to be pronounced or said a certain way for your liking and properness, if that's a word, you go ahead and go in there and take the grammar out of the grammar box, put it within your mind, use your consciousness, and put the sentence together quite accurately for you. All right, so let's get right now into this. We always talk about different things in the past. We talk about, all of these UFO sightings, and we're talking about other countries. United States has always been on the top of the list, right? And we've heard about the Roswell, New Mexico. We've heard about all these different ones, Betty and Barney Hill stories, and the list goes on and on and on. But what if I start sharing with you, and what most of us know, that this is a global thing? It's not just happening within the United States. It goes on in different places. So we're going to go over some of the 4 top cases, I think, or information, give you some background story, give you a little bit. It's going to move pretty fast tonight. And then that'll give you a couple of more talking points when it comes down to the barbecues next few months and 4th of July, whatever. You can talk about that alien stuff. So let's get down to the first one, and we're talking about this happened in Russia. Now, this was a pretty big deal when it happened back in 1989. In fact, CNN, a lot of people covered this particular story. This was an actual landing, okay? And that kids actually saw it. Now, it kind of coincide with what we had or seen in Zimbabwe with those kids. And it's kind of funny, because we're going to cover a couple of these stories, and it always seems that the kids are the one who are seeing these beings and extraterrestrials in living color versus a bunch of adults, or either the adults, I don't know, they just don't talk. All right, but this takes place, like I said, in Russia. And it took place one afternoon, one evening. I'll give you some couple of backstories and pictures here in a second. It was around 6:30 p.m. Russian time, and it was a bunch of kids. They saw a strange object that kind of landed or was flying down. Now, the description of this thing from the kids, it was a large sphere, a sphere, yes, it's about 30 feet in the diameter. It was made like a metallic material, and it had a low-pitched humming sound as it approached the ground, okay? And then it started, and they said it also started as like a pink shrine in the sky, and then it became a deeper red color as it got lower, and then opening on the top, and then it had strange symbols. Now, what really take this story to another level that we're going to get to here in a moment is that it actually, something came out. It was some actual creatures came out, and the kids talked about it, told their stories, and end up doing pictures and things, and we'll show you some of those clippings right now. There was several witnesses there. The witnesses talked about seeing a humanoid creature that emerged from one of the objects and also began to communicate with them telepathically. Now, this is seen to be a trend, that these extraterrestrials are not talking. So that sometimes leave us in a pickle when we get, now me being a UFO investigator, as you know, with the MUFON network, we get a lot of people say, oh, they talked to me. I heard them say, hey, such and such. But oftentimes when you get some of the occurrences that actually happen, most of the time these beings are speaking and communicating telepathically, because if you ever seen some of the pictures, they really don't have a big mouth and a use for it, right? So that's not been happening. But one of them was 10 feet tall. The other one was 3 feet tall. And then one of them had 3 eyes. Yeah, like a third eye. Well, I don't know. I'll show you a picture in a little bit. And the other one was too human-like, and it had a third eye. Again, it had a small mouth. It was very thin built, and it wore a silver suit, disc-shaped devices on their chest. And then let me believe whether it is some type of, creature or a spear, but let's get into some of the imagery that we have here that kind of explains some of the stories a little bit. And let me find them right about now. So this one happened, like I said, in Russia. And so this is just kind of a clip in here, and it was saying a UFO landing. In fact, it wasn't a fantasy. Now, once again, this is happening in all these countries. So it's not just United States, like I said, but we're talking about Russia. Now, another part of this is they actually gave a picture of what the creature looked like, and then I'll come back, show it to you here, and then we'll get back into showing you some clips of what the kids actually said. This is what they ran into. Now, you can definitely check this out and kind of see a little bit as well. But anyway, let me bag up for a minute. This is my Brazil case. This is Russia, so that's going to be my next one. I'm sorry. So anyway, let me bring that back out. It's not what the Russian kids ran into, but we'll get into their story here just one moment now. Okay, so Anyway, let me show you a couple of video clips that we're going to get into. And like I said, the kids in this was in Russia, pretty much. Oh, you know what? All right then. So yeah, we on the same story. It is my story. All right. So this is the Russia. This is what they saw. This is the pictures that they ended up. Man, my whole thing is messing up here for a minute. I got you covered though. Let's get into the video clips. That's going to get you a little better here. Anyway, so it all started out, and this is the beginning of what was going on.
In September of 1989, something happened in the city of Voronezh, 200 miles south of Moscow, which caught the attention of the world press. For several weeks, strange lights were seen over the city. Then on September the 27th, it was reported that a spacecraft landed in one of the city's public parks, from which 3 alien giant figures emerged. Drawings of the landings by children who were there capture the event vividly.
Yeah, so anyway, right here, this is what the picture that the kids drew, or someone else drew it afterward, but after interviewing the kids. So obviously there was a being type and there was some large robot type as well that came into this. And so it was kind of weird that the kids would explain that they saw something, but then they also saw a robot. So obviously the whatever extraterrestrial that showed up actually had something else with it, and that was pretty cool. So in these images here, though, and I'm going to give you a couple of things. When they talked to some of the kids, there was 3 or 4, and you got to listen to or see the captions on some of this because they're going to be speaking Russian, but you'll be able to understand some of the stuff as well. So here's one of the kids, what he said in the story.
Sergei Makarov was one of the school children who was in the Voronezh park.
I remember a crowd that gathered around the place. Everybody was scared. Everybody turned pale. I was absolutely flabbergasted.
Yeah, and so at this point, they were saying that this robot approached these children. Now, here's the deal. None of these children took off running, right? They didn't do normal stuff, what kids do. Not kids, what an adult would have done. Adult would have been out of there, right? Blazing, gone in history, right? But it's the kids. It's the curiosity that our children have these days that really set things in motion. And like I said, in this particular story, they also talked about all the different other sightings and things that was going on there. But again, this was one of the very first sightings that was reported during the Soviet Union time. Now, also, they investigated this through the military authorities as well. They grilled these children. They grilled these kids. They grilled them until they split them up, and then they all began to give them descriptives of the story. And that's when they realized that, hey, wait a minute, this probably actually happened because all the kids were unified with drawing stories, but also they was all instilled with a lot of fear. And so at that point, then you can really think about what those kids was doing. Now, there was another one that this gentleman talks about. Let's get into his statement.
I had no doubt that the UFO and the giants existed because I saw them. But sometimes when I look back, it seems sort of like a fairy tale.
Now, you heard him reference the UFO and giant, okay? And of course, we had planned to do some other segments on giants for Noah, but these two are not correlated or together in no kind of way. This is just what these kids saw. And again, if you saw some of the illustrations that was written, they saw some type of robot, some type of extraterrestrial being as well, and some kind of spacecraft. Now, if you start thinking about it, and this is something I want to put on your mind, and I tell people all the time, and then also I was contradicted with it once. I was talking to Richard Dolan, and I was saying, you know, just like we've had in 1968 or whenever this happened, imagine or 1989 is when this one happened, but imagine the cars and technology that we had in 1989 or Escalade versus a 2023 Escalade, right? Technology is totally different. The vehicle's been redesigned. It's got more and more. So you can imagine back then what type of spacecraft that they were using. Maybe their technology moved a lot faster than what we have. And now today we got orbs and all of these other things, right? And so it makes a lot of sense that this is what we're going on. But there was more kids. And so let me play with you, or play for you, one of the kids named Dennis and what he had to say.
Denis Bozhenko was also one of the boys in the park on that day in September 1989.
I saw some traces there, and also a strange man. Outwardly, he looked like any other man, only he was huge. A moment later, he suddenly disappeared.
Once again, the kids say they saw a huge man, like a giant. Which, okay, let's think about this for a minute, and we'll still tie it into some of our previous conversations. These kids seen giants. Now, again, when you look at some of the photographs that they drew or the illustrators drew after talking to the kids, it was a robot-looking thing. But imagine the fact that it was a giant, and okay, it's someone actually had the foreplan to say we're going to make a giant, and we all talk about were giants here in our past, but yet they came with some giant-looking robot-type item. Now, the point that I'm making with this is that once again, we got children, we got stories. Should we believe these kids? And same thing with Zimbabwe. These extraterrestrials seem to have some type of will that they want to stop where kids are playing. I have no clue why that is. And if you do know, you can post it in or have an assumption, because nobody knows. But you can put that in the chat, and maybe that's some conversation you all can have. But why are they hovering and landing near children? That is something. And even the next story, kids saw it again. And so it's something that I'm like, let's look into that, and maybe we can find out from there. And here's some other stories.
The creatures started coming out. They did not look too much like humans. They were much taller than humans. They did have shoulders, but I didn't see the head.
You see how these kids are describing this actual incident. CNN, everybody from America's heard about this and were calling, trying to interview them. Everyone was trying to get to the bottom of what was happening. They even had where they showed this thing possibly had landed on the ground, and there was illustrations for that. This thing, it's a huge story. And where I say this is oftentimes we get UFO sightings. We get people that see UFOs or all of these things. But now in the past, this was big. It was really big when it happened, but we don't talk about it today. It is not, even though now it's beginning to be a mainstream conversation, we're not talking about this stuff. We're not bringing it up. And then also you still got a faction of the population that's like, yeah, well, Roderick, UFO is not real. We don't care about all that. People, that is a different story altogether. And the fact of the matter is we are not alone. And once again, this is what they saw. Look at that orb type particular spacecraft and the other one. Now, again, I don't know if the big one was the robot or the little one was the robot, you know, and both of them within the drawings look like it, but that's one of those stories that we got to really think about. I got a couple more clips about it that will kind of help us a little bit, and he's going to literally give you a better description. Now, this one, again, I think you want to pay attention to some of the captions as well as.
А вот очевидец.
Да, мы испугались. Потом он завис вот над этим деревом.
Так.
Завис он, дверь открылась, и посмотрел большой человек, 3 метра. Голова у него, головы не было, плеч тоже, у него было просто такой бугорок. Вот.
Вместо головы?
Да, вот отсюда, вот, вот такой. Там было 3 глаза, 2 у него по бокам, а 1 в серединке. Голова у него не может поворачиваться, так в середине глаз он у него поворачивался. Он мог смотреть вправо, влево, вверх, вниз. Вот. И вместо носа было 2 дырки просто.
Сотрудники.
Now, did you see how he described the whatever it was? Didn't have a head, so I would think it's a small one, but it had 3 eyes and 1 eye in the middle. Could it be the remnants of our ancient civilizations, of a third eye, or whatever that we look at things? Is it possible that that is how they see the world? And like I said, they was around these kids. I have no clue, but this is one of the biggest stories that happened in the past. And like I said, it was huge when it happened, but let's talk about today, and that makes you wonder. So we're going to move on to the next story, and let's put that to test here. This next story takes place in Brazil, and that is Varginha, Brazil. In fact, it's from the movie Moment of Contact, right? It's on Amazon. You want to check this out. I think it's one of the best documentaries that it comes out. So I'm not going to do a spoiler alert for, well, I'll just talk about it a little bit, but the instance, but go to the Amazon Prime, rent it. I think you have to buy it, but it's still worth the $4 or $5 to pay for it. It is a wonderful show. Basically, I just want to say it happened in 1996, okay? Now, this, once again, was huge when it happened in January 1996 in Brazil. Now, Brazil is known to have tons of UFO occurrences, okay? And our government tends to be the one that monitors that, goes over there. But in the documentary that you're going to see, not here, but I'll show a couple of little things, they really did a great job of their government being transparent as much as they could about this. It was really cool how they end up doing that. And all right, so what it began was there was 3 young women reported seeing a strange creature crouch against a wall in a small town. Now, there was also stories prior to that there was a guy, him and his wife, they were sitting out on their farm, and they saw a spacecraft coming down, and it appeared to be having engine issues. It was smoking, it was whatever that, that's my sound effects. And it actually began to crash. Now, once again, makes you wonder, okay, we know their propulsion systems or anti-gravity or however it works, but when they showed some of the illustrations, this had some kind of smoke or something behind it. So this particular spacecraft actually lost control and crashed. And this is not the first time. We get a lot of time that there's a lot of crash retrievals from there. Now, the description, once again, of this particular extraterrestrial is a little different. I kind of showed it to you previously a little early, but we'll get back into it. But this particular creature was 5 feet tall, had large red eyes, okay, and had a small head, thin body, and it was covered in scales. During the documentary itself, the kids talk about how it was afraid. It was sitting there shivering and actually whining and sounding like a child. And that was kind of the sign or the sounds that it was making. One of the descriptions that they made with it, I'll show you here in just a second, was this particular slide. This is what they saw. It was sitting in a corner. It was sitting there pretty much afraid, and it had kind of like these horns on the top, 3 of them, or devil-looking horns, if you want to make it a description there. You can kind of do that. And here are the 3 children at that age. Now there are 4 grown adults when this happened, because once again, this happened in Brazil in 1996. Kids again, like I said before, that's my, connecting the dots theory. Why are we having them? Well, in this case, they end up crashing, and the kids, I will say, saw them. And of course, at this point, you have to then go and convince the adults. But this story took a weird turn, okay? It took a weird turn because there was a lot of other people involved besides children that actually encountered these particular extraterrestrials, of this one here in particular. They even captured one, okay? The story of it, and we'll get into that in just a moment. And there was an officer who actually rescued it, picked it up, and took it to the hospital. But later on in this segment here, I'll tell you what happened to him that was strangely odd enough. I don't know, maybe because he picked it up and something happened to him in such a way that I think, I don't know, it should be a warning to everybody once we get that. If you see one, leave them alone. So we'll get to that. So at this point, there was a lot of reports. There was reports of similar sightings in the area during the following days. There was reports of strange objects in the sky. There was the Brazilian military showed up on this deal, the swimming ducks, the Navy SEALs, everybody. Rumors of a crash UFO was recovered by the military. Now, after the report, what it was been said was that there was a rescue party sent out for this particular fallen extraterrestrial. And I'm not talking about us. It was a rescue party from other aliens coming and say, hey, we need to get our comrade, you know. You talking about got your back. You come in a spaceship to pick a brother up. But yeah, so that was a part of the story of this. And this particular guy right here was one of the soldiers who ended up seeing it. They was out on patrol, found it, and rescued it and took it to the hospital or some type of place that they had already where they was preparing to they claim it was already some kind of I don't know, sterilized place that it was already there for heart transplants and all that. But once again, just like us, you know, they already was prepared. They had a location prepared just in case something like this happened. They knew exactly where to take this particular extraterrestrial. But like I said, that soldier who rescued him, we'll get to that in just a minute. But now another part of this is that they were like, you know, trying to get these kids to really, and you know what? Let me let you hear some of their side of the story, what some of these kids said, and I'll play that for you right about now. Let me pull up the clip that I have for you, and we can go into that. Here's what the girls had to say.
Aquela coisa estranha, redonda, nossa, tava super estranho.
Ai, tinha uns negócios tipo chifre na cabeça. Tinha, assim, a pele marrom, parecendo que passou com algum óleo no corpo. Tinha um pé grande, uns olhos super regalados, vermelho.
Now, there was plenty of reports reporting that this animal had, or not animal, I'm sorry, I'm going to give it a name. I don't know. But anyway, this particular extraterrestrial had some kind of weird smell to it. It had some kind of skin, okay, which will be significant here in just a moment with this soldier, the one that picked him up. But yeah, they were describing this, and again, it was warrant. It was kind of whining, crying, or so to speak, like, oh, it was afraid and everything else. But yet, we still got the bravery of these children that, hey, they watched it, they seen it, and physically looked at it. Now, it did not pose them any harm. It did not attack anybody, even though it was in a place where it was probably afraid and probably could have caused some type of injury because maybe it had some kind of technology that we are not familiar with in doing that. But let's get into some other parts about this. So they took this creature into custody, okay? They grabbed him and said, we're going to take him in. They took him into an examination and everything else. Now, what started happening after this is what was really strange. The particular soldier who was deemed as a hero because he captured this thing ended up starting to complain about different types of things, that he was having a rash and he had a lot of symptoms that he had, and they could not figure out where he got it from. Simultaneously, at the same time, animals and other things started winding up dead that they was reporting. Now, they hadn't put a connection to two, but the coincidence of it all, hey, you know, was probably about the same. And one of the things that they talked about, in fact, let's play a clip for you of what happened with this soldier.
At around 6 p.m., 2 police officers spotted a strange animal collapsed on the road. One of the officers, a man named Marco Cerese, picked the creature up and took it to a local hospital, where there was a special quarantine area already set up.
Now, once again, there was a special quarantine area already set up, as you hear the story. That means they expected things. We have stuff like that here in the United States. And like I said, Brazil is actually a known hotspot when it comes down to crashes, UFOs, extraterrestrial sightings, and maybe it's the temperature there. You know, we talk about the reptilian side, and I used to have a pet store, so I know a lot of reptiles like heat lamps and all that. Maybe that's why they show up in Mexico. Maybe that's why in these hot places we get that. That's just a sidebar. It's just a sidebar. Something to get you say, all right, we'll go to that. But what happened to this guy? What happened to this guy? Well, let's find out.
There were also reports of animals dying without explanation at the local zoo in the following weeks. Allegedly, the dead animals were examined in a lab where they found a bizarre toxic substance in their intestines. On February 15th, police officer Marco Cerese, who had been the one to reportedly pick up the creature, died in a local hospital. It was said that he had developed an abscess and come down with flu-like symptoms before dying of sepsis, but the doctors never found exactly what caused his symptoms. He was only 23 years old.
Now, you hear that. Unfortunately, he succumbed to whatever it was that he touched, animals, everything else, and which makes you wonder, the fact that we probably, it's almost like the opposite. If you start thinking about one of the things here when it comes here, that most of the extraterrestrials do not, oxygen is a little different from here. So, but all of the other spacecrafts and stuff that landed or what we find in UFO investigations give off radiation, footprints or whatever they been. The radiation is lethal to humans, but on the opposite spectrum to them, they can live in an irradiated environment. So it's kind of funny that, not funny, but it's not thinkable that because he picked this thing up, this foreign animal, that it has. Now, let me point something out to everyone, just something to get you to truly think about where I'm going with this. Do you see the format that I'm talking about? The robot had 2 legs, 2 arms, and a head, some eyes. The extraterrestrial beings walked on 2 legs and had 2 arms, some eyes, and a head. They was big red eyes, by the way, okay? Even when we get gray aliens and everything else, it makes you still take a deep thought, because at this point you have to think there is a format within the universe that works. 2 legs, some arms, and a head works. Who's creating this, or who is the God to all of these different type of species and extraterrestrial? Because whoever it is got the same blueprint and said, it works. The humans can use it. The dogs and cats can use eyes and nose, and it's just something that I thought, there's something I was thinking about, nothing else from there. But then all of a sudden there was a cover-up in Brazil. They began to cover it up. Here's what happened to the girls as they was getting older and they was approached. Think about this one.
In an interview in 2006, the 3 women who first spotted the creature said that 4 months after their encounter, they were visited by 5 men who offered them money if they would retract their statements about what they saw. Many believe that they were government agents and that all of the events that occurred during that time were covered up as part of a conspiracy.
You hear that? Those women, the picture that you saw was now them as full-grown adults, because they're still around, said that they were approached by men who was going to pay them to recant the story. Let me say that again. They was going to pay them to recant their stories. Ladies and gentlemen, this is in 1996, I think is when this happened, okay? And I'm saying this to say, they always been trying to cover these things up. They always been trying to cover it up. And at this point, like you said, they thought there was maybe some government officials, but all they wanted them to say, hey, we may have been mistaken. This is something that we're going, we didn't see this. It happens all the time. It happens here in the United States, probably happens all over the world, because there are some big secret keepers. That's what we call them here on Why the Big Secret. The big secret keepers ain't playing with these stories. They ain't playing with the evidence when it comes down to Orwell Long and all of these things. This is why, we are now pushing toward disclosure, and there's a huge push because we want to know the truth. We're truth seekers. If you was here at the beginning of the theme song, it's all about truth seeking. And one of the things here that I always tell everyone, your eyes are useless when your mind is blind. It's time to think why. I don't care about what happens out there, okay? I don't care how they do it. I don't care what is going on with these things that they're doing. I'm more focused on the why. It is nothing more important than finding out why they're covering it up, why these things are happening, why all of this, because whatever reason that is, That's what we should be concerned about. I'm telling you, 100%. So they tried to downplay this. And this is how good that they can be when it comes down to covering up the stories, especially with these girls. They offered them money. They didn't take it. So they said, you know what? We're going to make them look bad. We're going to create our own storyline. Look at this yourself. Be a judge for yourself of how they put this out there. Just listen closely.
The Brazilian military opened an official inquiry on the events and concluded that the girls had probably seen a known local homeless man covered in mud who had physical and mental disabilities. He was very thin with an abnormally large head and was known to crouch on streets. When asked, the three women denied this and stuck to their story.
Are you serious? You see how far they could go? No, what y'all saw? No, you saw a man crouched over who's normally on the street homeless, and he's got big ears, and he got stuff on. He got knots on his forehead or something. That's what y'all saw, really. And they put this out in public to say. But anyway, go to Amazon, check out the original documentary. It will probably be one of the best purchases that you would make. I'm telling you, it's the bomb. But where I'm going with this is the cover-up is real. It is real. So if you hearing stories where there was kids that saw this, witnesses saw the plane or the aircraft or the spaceship or whatever, having engine trouble when it crashed, and obviously that one came out. Days later, they saw one hovering above, looking. It came to rescue its comrades. Didn't find them. Why? Because we done took this thing and put it up somewhere, right? And then unfortunately handling it because it is a foreign object. Whatever it had on its body was invasive to our human body. And so it was killing animals. Wherever that thing was going through, the bushes and dogs and stuff touched it, lights out. Even a gentleman. And go into the video, you'll get more detail. But where I'm going is saying that the cover-up is real. All of this is real. So you can go back into our history as an American history when it comes down to UFOs and ufology. And this is why you still got a faction of the public who's like, okay, it's not going out. It's not real. It's not one of those deals, or we don't have UFOs from there. All right, we got 2 segments left. This is going to be really quick. We'll get to it. But before we're doing that, definitely want to give you all the message of the day. And this, of course, we're talking about the Forbidden Conscious Award that's coming up in a few months. You got to get your tickets. You got to go. You got to support this annual, but the first ever held event in our space, in the conscious space. Of course, Billy and Liz and the Forbidden Knowledge team is putting this on. Definitely, it's going to be something to it's just going to be epic because it's the beginning. We all got these Oscars and all that, but you got great people in this community, and none of them get their flowers, so to speak, and therefore it is time to do that. So in the meantime, check it out and make sure that you want to be part of what I'm about to show you now.
Hey everybody, it's Billy Carson, also known as Forbidden Knowledge. I want to talk to you about a very special event coming up July 30th, 2023. The Forbidden Conscious Awards, the first annual event of its type. We're going to honor people who have been contributing to the conscious community for decades. People that you know and love that have helped you get to higher levels of thought and consciousness and awareness. And guess what? It's time to give them their flowers while they're still alive. It's going to be a live in-person event, but seats are going to sell out very fast. You want to make sure you're there in person for this amazing level event. It's going to be above the Oscars, above the Grammys. And guess what? You can help vote for the winners. Voting is available on forbiddenknowledge.com. And the categories are going to be social media influencer, podcast/radio host, TV host, actor, director, producer, entrepreneurs, health and wellness, philanthropists, authors, field researchers, archaeologists, space anomaly hunters, and of course, a Lifetime Achievement Award. And you want to be there in person because I'm going to be speaking. That's right, I'll be your keynote speaker that night at the Forbidden Conscious Awards. If you want to come to a mini conference, this is the place to be because I'm going to give you the knowledge that night as well as performances. We have celebrity guests performing. We'll have a halftime show where we're actually going to perform music for you. And don't forget about the pre-event mixer, where if you buy a box seat, you'll be in the VIP section, and you also have private access to a VIP mixer with celebrity guests. shake hands, break bread, network, and then walk the red carpet with us and take amazing photos. It's going to be a night to remember. You don't want to forget this. And you help vote by going to forbiddenknowledge.com, go to the Conscious Awards link. You can text in a vote for who you want for any category, as well as if you're out of the country, you can use the web form ballot to still vote for anyone you think is worthy of being honored that night. Make sure you hurry up and get your tickets because they're selling out very fast. I want to see you there. Forbidden Conscious Awards 2023.
All right, so definitely we want to see you at the Forbidden Knowledge Conscious Award. Just give you a little background if you didn't know, I'm Roderick Martin, and you can find me in any other places. You can find me on Gaia with Regina Meredith. You can find me on Beyond Belief with George Norrie. You can also find Alien Endgames, which is on the Discovery Plus channel, as well as Fox Tubi, Gaia, like I said, Ancient Aliens, Forbidden Knowledge TV on the Black Knight satellite. Definitely can do that. And again, here you go. Go to voteforroderick.com. I'm already been nominated. All you have to do is vote for me and go there, podcast radio host. If I can just get one of you to vote, it'll just be so beautiful just for the nomination part. And I really appreciate it all from there. And so just to give you a good example of a few things, and pretty much we'll get the show on its way. Let me just share something with you in just a second here. And I think that you will probably like this pretty much. Let's go with, there we go. Check this out.
And just so happened, I looked up and I saw this little disc thing moving, and it was followed by 2 military jets. But it was a secret because in my community, that's not something that you go and talk about. Extraterrestrials wasn't abducting us, why not? It's like, okay, we done been on ships in the past. We're not getting on another ship without a destination, period. The younger people are now being what I consider emotionally and religiously bankrupt. You start thinking, wait a minute, free energy, no billions, free energy, no billions. Lock the door. Tell everyone, your eyes are useless when your mind is blind. We got to get past the point where we see things, but our mind won't let us interpret it. People ask all the time, Roderick, what do the ETs look like? And then I say, I don't know if you want my answer. And I'm glad you just asked me.
All right, so that is a show, Virginia Meredith, which is on Gaia right now. If you do have an opportunity to go see it, do post some great comments. It is out. Support the show. Let's get into our third segment right now, and this is another event. This happened in France in 1965. This is in Valençon, France, and this is a French farmer named Maurice Masses witnessed an oval-shaped object landed in his lavender field. Now, thinking it was an unauthorized helicopter, he walked toward it, and shazam, there was some problems there or whatever he saw. But the description of this is it was 10 feet in the diameter, had 4 legs, a dome, and a top. Now, once again, this is also my investigative hat on, or my thoughts process. We now have a second spacecraft that has prongs and legs when it actually lands into a ground. You're talking these primitive type situations that we see here, and it makes you wonder what really happens when it gets down to that. But 10 feet, 30 feet, these are not huge crafts that a human is getting out of, or not a human, but whatever size of a particular extraterrestrials. We would think, in most cases, we're going to think about a mothership, right? We're going to think about something huge, or even some bigger. If they're going to travel through space, they got to have something big that they're going to get out of. But ultimately, we're talking these little 10 feet things. We're talking about the pink spear that the Russians kid saw was a round object on 3 legs as well. It's like, what is going on? So you can also tend to try to say, well, maybe these are man-made objects, right? And because they still got the primitive thing with 3 legs. But I have to admit, I'm here in Dallas, Texas, and about 4 years ago, there was an investigation that was done up north from Dallas in McKinney. There was an actual landing that one of the MUFON, our organization, actually investigated. And you can go and look up their archives and see this. But once again, on the property, the pictures that was taken, there was 3 imprints into the ground from these legs. So obviously, this is what they use and say, okay, we're going to land on the ground and legs come out of this particular craft. I just would think, you know, they would probably find some other way of doing it, but hey, it works, and the modern wheel works and everything else. So let's get back into the story, though. What he said, though, he saw something that came out of these things. And like I said before, this is big when it happened, but it's less talked about today, and I can't tell you why. We got to know why out of all of this news and stuff that comes out now, why don't we go back and bring these stories forward as evidence to say, yes, all right, here in the United States, of course, we have our own UFO office now. And of course, I'm going to come up with the hashtag UFO taxes, everyone. That's going to be the hashtag. But the whole point is they are real. They're here. We got a government office. And if you paying taxes, you're paying for it. He said that these 2 being humanoid now, this is what he says. He said humanoid beings emerged from the object and approached him. They came to him. Now, this is not the first story. Of course, we got all of these abduction stories that we hear where people are being taken, but now we're seeing in these particular stories, they come in peace. But they was 4 feet tall, though. Ha, I know, right? Ain't that something? 4 feet tall. We talk about that in the past. All these alien grays were 4 feet tall. I mean, childlike things, right? They kids. I mean, this is not the first story. We probably had countless of stories in our history of 4 foot tall beings. Now we got giants, we got 4-footers, we got 6-footers. All that, ladies and gentlemen, there's a lot of stuff out there. There's a lot of stuff out there, and it ain't just one alien. It ain't just one species. It is a plethora of extraterrestrial beings coming from all over the place visiting this particular planet of ours. And that is something for us to look at and think about, because once again, here's a little newspaper clipping. This guy, and they're showing, once again, there's things on the ground. This is a clipping. Go look it up, the story, and check it out. It'll just make you wonder. They even did some measurements here. There was high level of calcium traces discovered at the landing site, and the plant life began to die. Did y'all hear what I just said? The plant life began to die wherever this thing is landing. That makes you wonder. You should be thinking what I'm thinking. We got 3 stories that we already covered, and each one of them talks about contact with some type of extraterrestrial, and whatever it comes in contact with, the biological side of things break down and die. Y'all remember, right? The guy died, dogs and cats and other animals was dying in the neighborhood. In this case, the thing touched the ground and the plant life begins to die around it. And you want to see an extraterrestrial? We want whatever this is to welcome itself to Earth, and I'm gonna invite you over to McDonald's or something. No, obviously not, because these are the stories we don't talk about. We don't talk about that this thing, or whatever it is a biological problem for our human species. And we saw the movie War of the Worlds, right? We obviously you remember, go check the movie out. I'm not, whatever, but it didn't live because our viruses evaded it. But anyway, it was 4 feet tall, grayish green skin, elongated head. It had a sharp chin, slanted eyes, one-piece outfit covering their bodies and heads and making a grumbling noise. So obviously it's wearing clothes. Clothes is universal, galaxy universal. This is the second thing with the outfit. I don't know what it's hiding, but once again, gray. Now, the backstory that you need to know from the Roswell, New Mexico stories here in the United States is that these gray beings are mechanical in nature, okay? That they are some type of biological suits over the whatever's within or operating these things. That's the story that it has. And so once again, we do hear that they are wearing some type of clothing or whatever. But, One of the things about it, the masters claim that one of these beings pointed a pencil-like object at him, paralyzing him in his tracks. Boom. They do not come in peace, okay? And if they do have the power, let me read that again. He said that one of those things pointed a pencil-like, this is an ink pen, okay? This is not a gun. We got guns and stuff that can't be this small. Y'all know that, right? This is about the size of a bullet if you cut it to go into something that we have, our technology. It pointed a pencil-like device at him and paralyzed him, like, boop. All I'm saying is we know, once again, I'm going to tie it back to the old story, a couple of weeks back or 2 months back. Oh, we got these Chinese balloons. Oh, we got extraterrestrials. We shooting them down. There is no way we going to shoot them down because that's not happening. And if we get into a gun battle with them, that ain't happening either because he got a pen and this was years back. Imagine what he got now. He probably just with his mind, okay? Because that was a long time ago. Also, he claims during his being paralyzed or paralysis that the beings communicated with him telepathically. Once again, they're not talking. They're not using words. So imagine, today in society, if we was to adapt that particular policy in the house, how many arguments, we having with somebody, yep, yeah, get out. It's like, it's useless. So maybe talk is cheap in their world. I don't know. Maybe not. But the beings seem to be conducting some type of investigation. They're checking him out. They're saying, now, we have Whitley Strieber is one of my past guests on my podcast. You can go back and listen to it. He wrote the book Communion. And he talked about when he was abducted that they probed him from behind. Okay. Ouch. Yeah, that hurt. And they put some type of tracker in his body that you can still see today through x-rays, so to speak. And Betty and Barney Hill story, they were investigating them, put them on the table, took the teeth out, trying to check him out, his false teeth, by the way, checking them out, trying to see what's ever. We got those cattle things that's happening to cows. Somebody is inspecting those. So why are they coming here like we're some specimen? Remember last week's show when I had Billy Carson? I said, well, maybe we're some type of experimental planet, right? And he was like, yeah, Roderick, that could be it. Now, we didn't go into the detail of why that, but again, nothing is important as to why. We got to ask ourselves, why are they experimenting with humans, okay? Now, that do take us on the spectrum, and I'm going to take a quick detour here that we can go back to the past and the ancient civilizations and how we were developed and whoever created man and all of the different species that we are, and our genetics been changed 64 times, our DNA and all of these things. But then now you got somebody else coming saying, I need to find out and check out whatever Uzuzu made on Earth. We're going to come and see what his product is, which is these humans. I'm just speculating, but that's the why. We got to know why. So they returned to the craft. They took him off, and they took off into the sky. And after a few minutes of their investigation, so they just popped down, checked him out, boop, hit him, paralyzed him, start probing him, checking him out, found out what they needed to know. And it's like, oh yeah, this whatever, and they left just like they came. So after that, you saw the image that I showed you earlier. There was some deep hole that was moist. The area was moist, which ultimately, he said it got hardened like concrete right there where it was. And then he also said the plants and all that began to die. That's some serious stuff, people. And then he said lab studies confirmed that it was high amounts of calcium where that craft landed. I don't know what calcium would have to do with the fact of this craft and besides radiation. So oftentimes, we hear the thoughts of radiation. In this particular time, we're talking about calcium. So maybe you scientists out there can find out, put it in the chat for everyone else, and why or what does calcium have to do with it? See, once again, why? So we need to know. Now, this was widely reported incident in the French media. It was investigated by local authorities. And then ultimately, other witnesses reported strange lights in the area at the same time. That's what I'm talking about. This stuff happens all the time. And so we just got to get into it. Let's get into the next one. And this is in Australia in 1968. Okay. And this particular story takes place. And it was on April the 6th, to be exact, the date itself. It was at the Westwall High School in Melbourne, Australia. You see the correlation that I'm getting to again. It was outside of this last one. This one was at a high school. They got to know where they're landing, right? They got to know that they're putting themselves in front of children and not full-grown adults. Maybe they're being cautious and say, well, if we land in front of kids, we're not worrying about getting shot at, right? Or maybe something happening or anything in particular. Who knows? But that was probably the plan. Now, they said students and teachers witnessed a strange object in the sky, and the description of it was silver and gray in color. We still getting some of these same looks. Obviously, whatever this particular color scheme works, and it works for them, and I assume that it will work for us. But witnesses claimed that the object appeared to be descending toward the ground and eventually landing in a nearby field. And so obviously it needed a controlled landing in a place where there was no anything obstructing it or whatever. These are things. But here's the story again. Listen to what they saw. And let's get the article, matter of fact, that was posted about this in the papers, and you can kind of check that out as well. So here it is, a flying saucer this time. And now, this was in 1966. It makes you wonder, because in 1966, it was a flying saucer. And I say that is, can we still got flying saucers today? Is that technology that they're using today versus orbs, things that could possibly be camouflage or whatever type of situation that they can use to fly without being seen, the different type of propulsion. But when you go back to the 1947s, you go back to the early 60s and everything else, you have flying saucers. So it makes me think that, and I'm not saying flying saucers don't exist today, because we got old cars today, right? And somebody could be driving down in a hoopty or old 57 Chevy, and we go, that's cool. I'm saying just as much as our technology advances, I'm sure because they're 1,000 years ahead of us, their technology advances as well. And so who knows what is going on when it comes down to that, but technology is the technology. And I'm still say it again, we was not shooting down no UFOs, orbs, maybe the balloons. Well, if we did, it was man-made objects. I'm going to tell you that, because the technology is too advanced. But the witness reported seeing one or more humanoid figures near the object. All right. Another humanoid style. See, you would think of the movie Star Wars, right? If you think about Star Wars, you ever seen Star Wars? Any of you? If you have, I'm sure you have. There was a scene in Jedi Return, one of the series of it, that they walk into this bar, and then in this bar you see all these creatures, with squiggling arms. You got blue girls, blue ladies that were sexy. You got big hairy things. You got big blobs looking stuff. You had all of these multi creatures looking, but in all of these stories that we're getting, all of them appear to have some type of humanoid physical appearance, right? So the question is, are things out there in the universe using the same format? Could we be space travelers, or all of these things? Whatever it is walking on two legs, right? Everything seems, nobody's reporting that an extraterrestrial got out on 6 legs. Nobody. Now, maybe it's some extra eyes, and why not? More eyes, the better, right? But they do know they only need but 2 legs to walk, and 2 arms, and whatever. So this particular, what I call framework for whatever we look like, and that goes back to the question, what people, Roderick, you just saw it in the clip. What about the extraterrestrials? What do they look like? I get that question all the time, and I stay, and I'm going to say it now, is what if we look like them? Now that you're hearing what I'm saying, what if we look like them? Every report said it was a humanoid type looking thing, whether it was a robotic look, whether it was a human look, whether it was a creature look, it all still, so evolution or how we evolved and how we done changed and all of that stuff, obviously out there in the universe is something totally different. Now, the witness reported getting very close to the object and observing in details, okay? And let me give you the details once again of the particular object in question here. It was about the size of a car. It was metallic surface. It was smooth, round shape. And there we go again. These are not big machines. These are not mothership type stuff. These are, and which could also go back to the story that was aired, and Billy talked about it on a video. I talked about it on a video that there was some possible mothership that they're saying that are releasing probe-like items visiting Earth. And you're seeing all of these are one person, two people carriers. They're not coming out with a fleet of freaking, there was hundreds of them walking out, doing, it was only one or two. Something has to be nearby where they're going. And like they said, we got motherships that's possibly cloaked where we can't see them now because that's the new technology that they're using. But whatever's happening is we're being visited. And this, again, was back in 1968, by the way. I wasn't even born. Okay, yeah, I know, I ain't that old. I wasn't even born when this was happening. And so, they're coming in, once again, it looked like the size of a car. We don't have technology size of a car that we can fly into airspace and all of that. We ain't even close to doing that, where you get into a one-man craft size of a car, size of a 10-footer, and now it is flying and moving. We don't have that technology, but obviously they do, and the question is, where are they coming from? Is it somewhere close by, on the other side of the moon possibly, or some other galaxy? Because obviously it's a small car, provisions and all, anyway, size of a car. Well, this thing was widely reported in the Australian media, and skeptics dismissed the story, as always, as a hoax and misidentified natural phenomena. This is why we had the terminology switch from UFOs to unidentified area phenomena. It's like the whole thing, they're just trying to shift it and coin phrases and everything else, and we've been dealing with this stuff forever in a day. So check that article out, look it up. You won't be disappointed in that, and pretty much in from there. And so I just wanted to really quickly give you some stories of things that's not in our American news, right? Stories that we don't hear about in our history books because they're in other countries, and sometimes there's media blackouts. And as you saw in a couple of other stories, there's cover-ups involved. And like I said, definitely on that one, the Contact one from Brazil, you can go to Amazon and do it tonight, watch it, give the guy some good reviews, because the movie, the documentary James did, is off the charts, by the way. And so check those things out when you get an opportunity. Validate the quest, the seeking the truth when it comes down to extraterrestrial beings, because there's going to be a day. There is going to be a day that they're going to get out and they're going to say something, and the world is going to know. And the question we're going to ask is, what about religion? Who is your God? Where you come from? All of these questions, and society is going to lose their freaking mind when it comes to that and everything else. I'm Roderick Martin. You was here tonight at the Why the Big Secret show. I have a YouTube channel myself, which is Roderick Martin at Why the Big Secret on YouTube. Please, if you have not, subscribe to the channel. Over there, we do more some conspiracy type things as well, debunking those, telling you the why. We always uncovering the why. A lot of new shows is coming up in formats that we're going to do. But in the meantime, if you have not subscribed to this channel, make sure you like and subscribe. Make sure you thumbs up the video, okay? Afterwards, post comments and everything else. In the meantime, it's been a plum, pleasing pleasure, as well as a privilege serving you tonight. God bless each and every one of you. And like I said to my haters, if you can hate me without meeting me, I can love you without ever meeting you. Good night.